Roses are red, violets are blue. This is a Crue Trime, not a poem. Let's just get started. And it's time for Crue Trime. Crue Trime. Crue Trime. Crue Trime. These are getting more and more ridiculous. Hi guys, welcome back. Happy Valentine's Day. In today's episode of Crue Trime, we're going to talk about Oscar Pistorius. I'm wearing my Valentine's Best love earrings, and today's Crue Trime story happened on Valentine's Day. If you're new here, hi, welcome, hello. My name is Sarah. I never say that. I do have a name. I'm going to be telling a true crime story, a Crue Trime story, and putting on my makeup. I don't really talk about the makeup. I'm just telling the story. If you want to know what makeup I'm using, check the description box. Everything's listed down there. Okay, let's get started. Just after 3 a.m. on the morning of February 14th, 2013, security guards were called to the home of Oscar Pistorius in the high security community of Silver Woods Country Estate in Pretoria, South Africa, about 30 miles north of Johannesburg. When they arrived, Oscar was at the bottom of his marble staircase, cradling the bloodied body of 29-year-old Reeva Steenkamp. She had been shot 3 times by Oscar. When investigators and first responders went further into the house, they found the crime scene, which was the bathroom. The bathroom was off of the main bedroom, Oscar's bedroom, and it was the fancy kind that had like the separate toilet room. This is a little pale. The door to the toilet had been sprayed with bullets, and the door had been beaten open. There was blood everywhere. So Oscar said that when he and Reeva had retired to the bedroom for the evening, he locked the door, as he did every night. He woke up in the early morning hours because it was very hot inside the room. So he got out of bed and took the fans in from the patio that was right off of the bedroom, and he brought them inside. Then he drew the curtains closed and shut the sliding glass doors, and the room is now like totally pitch black. As he did that, he heard what sounded like the window opening in the bathroom. So he thought, oh my gosh, burglar. There had been some contractors working on his house, and they had left some ladders outside the bathroom window, and there weren't any bars on the windows. So Oscar was terrified. He grabbed his handgun to protect himself and Reeva, who was still in the bed. Without turning on the light, he headed into the passage leading to the bathroom. There was no door between the bedroom and the bathroom. It was just like a long kind of hallway with cabinets on either side. It was like a closet. So once he was in the hallway headed to the bathroom, he was screaming at the intruders to get out of the house, and he shouted towards the bedroom for Reeva to call the police and to get down on the ground. He was not wearing his legs. Well, did I mention that? He didn't have feet. Like just below the knee down, gone. He wore prosthetic legs. So with no legs on, he made his way to the bathroom on his stumps. He heard what sounded like a door slam. So the only place the intruder could be at that point was inside the toilet. Oscar sort of balanced himself against the wall. You know, he was a little unsteady on just the stumps. He was waiting for the intruder to like burst out of the door towards him, or for someone else to come climbing up through the window on those ladders from outside, right? So at this point, he is standing there yelling into the night, into the dark in the bathroom, and then he heard a sound come from the toilet. Do you hear that? My neighbor has a power saw out in the alley. Great. So Oscar heard a noise come from inside the toilet, which he perceived as like they were about to bust out of the toilet toward him. So he fired 4 shots from his gun into the door. So then he went back into the bedroom and he reached out for Reeva. He felt the top of the bed, nothing. So he thought maybe she was like hiding on the floor next to the bed or like in the curtains, and he's like reaching around for her, and the room is empty. Holy shit. Where's Reeva? So then he's thinking, oh my God, was that Reeva in the bathroom? So now he's in a total panic, and he ran out to the balcony and yelled out for help. Then he went back into the room, put on his prosthetic legs, and ran back to try to open the toilet door, and it was locked. So he tried to like shoulder charge the door and tried to kick down the door. It was not working. So he went back into the bedroom again and got his cricket bat, and then he used the cricket bat to beat the door until a panel of the door you know, broke open and he was able to look inside, and it was Reeva. She was on the floor facing the toilet, slumped over. He finally got the door open, and then he felt up for a pulse on Reeva. He pulled her out of the bathroom. He, at this point, was just like devastated. Like, oh my God, what did I do? You know, he's crying, he's in total despair. He used his cell phone to call for help, and then he carried Reeva downstairs. When the paramedics, or, you know, the medical responder people arrived, they couldn't save her. She was pronounced dead at the scene. And when detectives eventually arrived, Oscar was like totally in a daze. He was wearing his prosthetic legs at that point, and he had on a bloody shirt, bloody shorts. His head was in his hands. He was just crying. Okay, so let's rewind. Oscar Leonard Carl Pistorius was born on November 22nd, 1986 in South Africa to Hank and Sheila Pistorius. And when he was 11 months old, both of his feet were amputated because he had a congenital defect. He was born with fibular hemimelia. It really means that half of his calf bones were gone and some of the bones in his feet were gone. So the amputation allowed him to be fitted with prosthetic legs. He did really well with the prosthetic legs, and he was a very athletic kid. He played rugby, cricket, he wrestled. In his teen years, he got a pretty bad knee injury and he was almost pretty much sidelined, so they started him running track as part of his physical rehab. He was so naturally athletic that he really did excel with running, and he very quickly was breaking school records. He was running in the Paralympic Games. In 2007, the International Association of Athletic Foundations banned him from competing, saying that the kind of prosthetic legs that he used, the flex foot cheetahs, they look like blades, right? It's like not a foot shaped, it's just like that little, like a banana curve. Anyways, they said that it gave him an unfair advantage because of the design, but he fought that ruling, and then he went on to become the first double-leg amputee to compete in the Olympic Games, like the regular Olympic Games. In 2012, he went to London, the London Games. He was age 25. So I'm not an expert on anything, really. I mean, sure, like the kind of prosthetics he was using, of course they help, but you know, it takes more than just a fancy, like, foot design to, right? Like your body still has to use all the muscles and motion and endurance and stamina and strength. Anyways. Okay, so by all accounts, Oscar Pistorius, also known as the Bladerunner, he was a superstar athlete and he had serious celebrity status. He was the recipient of many awards and honors, including an honorary doctorate from the University of Strathclyde, the BBC Sports Personality of the Year. He was in Time Magazine's Time 100 twice. He appeared on many TV shows, including the Italian version of Celebrity Survivor and Dancing with the Stars. He had very high-profile sponsorship deals, including Nike, Oakley, Terry Mugler, and he even appeared as a model in their campaigns because he's a handsome dude. The point is, he was a rising star. Okay, Reeva Steenkamp. She was born on August 19th, 1983 in Cape Town, South Africa to Barry and June Steenkamp. She studied law at Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University and eventually worked as a paralegal. She was also stunning, like beautiful. She began modeling at age 14 and she became the face of Avon Cosmetics in South Africa. She was also a bit of a socialite and she was a regular red carpet guest at the Johannesburg party scene. She was named by FHM magazine as one of the 100 sexiest women in the world and appeared on the cover in December 2011. So Miss Reeva was definitely a rising star on her own, and she was even booked to appear on the debut season of the South African version of Celebrity Survivor. By November 2012, Oscar and Reeva had met through a mutual friend, and then they hit it off over a lunch date. And then afterward, Oscar asked Reeva to be his date for the South African Sports Awards. Not really expecting her to come because it was really sort of like short notice, you know, last minute, but she went and they ended up having a great time. They were talking into the wee hours of the morning, as you do. They ended up spending Christmas together, and things really started to pick up by about January. They were a gorgeous couple, okay? A model and an athlete. They were both very accomplished, very much on the rise. How many times am I gonna say on the rise? On the rise! So things were going good. They were going really well for both Oscar and Reeva. By the time this event took place, they had been dating about 3 months. So really, they hadn't been together that long. So what happened? Okay, so since it was never in doubt that Oscar was the one who shot Reeva, he was charged with her premeditated murder. In addition to some firearms violations, the state's case was based on the analysis of the crime scene and other evidence, including the quality of Oscar and Reeva's relationship. They asserted Oscar and Reeva had a terrible argument that night. And that Reeva retreated to the toilet to hide from the abuse of Oscar, and that he intentionally shot her. So during the trial, the prosecution was relentless, okay? When you watch the court footage, there's a few things that I noticed that are not odd per se, but they're just very different from American court. So first of all, there's no jury. In South Africa, juries were abolished in like the 60s. So what that means is that the head of the court is the presiding judge, and in the Oscar Pistorius trial, the judge presiding was a woman. So every question is answered to the court, not necessarily to the person asking the question. Like the male prosecutor would be asking Oscar questions and he would answer, "Yes, my lady," because he's talking to the judge. He's talking to the court. Also, when I was watching the prosecutor light into Oscar, it felt more like an interrogation at times, you know? There wasn't any objections from Oscar's legal representation, even when it seemed, to me, not a South African law expert, but it seemed like the questions were like leading or argumentative or speculative, but you know, anyway. So the state's case was that Oscar's account of Reeva's accidental death was just far-fetched. If he was so afraid of intruders, then why did he go toward the threat? How did he not know that Reeva wasn't in the bed when he got up? Reeva never made a sound that night. Not a sound. She didn't yell out, "It's me, not an intruder. It's me in the toilet. Just going to the bathroom." It seemed very suspicious. And then also the prosecution dug in to Oscar's character, his past behavior. Okay, so a little bit more background on Oscar. So growing up in South Africa, violent crime is, or was, rampant. Okay, and Oscar was conditioned over the years to fear home invasion, especially, and to mistrust authorities because many were corrupt. He had been a victim himself of burglaries in the past, and he had received many death threats. So Oscar felt it very necessary to arm himself, even though he lived in a secure community. The security forces meant to protect him could be in on it. So he was certainly very paranoid, and he constantly feared for his safety. During the trial, the prosecution showed footage of Oscar at a gun range, and the evidence was meant to highlight that Oscar was in fact a gun enthusiast, maybe a little trigger happy, that he was very comfortable with guns and was quick to reach for one. Multiple multiple incidents were described to discredit Oscar as a hot-headed egomaniac. There was an incident where he was at a restaurant and he was gonna purchase a handgun from a friend, and somewhere in the handling of this firearm, it discharged right in the restaurant. Whoops. So he begged his friend at that point to take the heat because he didn't need any bad press with all the things he had going on, you know, being an Olympian and all that. There was another incident described where Oscar was accused of firing a gun out of the sunroof of a moving car on the highway. Anyways, they're just really trying to point out that Oscar was into guns, man. Into guns. Big time. Now, the relationship. Reeva's mother said that she first learned of the relationship after seeing photos of Reeva and Oscar together on a red carpet. She found it odd that her only daughter wouldn't have told her about this guy. To be fair, you know, that date was super last minute, so maybe she didn't have time to call her mom while she was trying to get her dress and stuff together. That's such short notice. Reeva's cousin also said that she could tell that Reeva was excited and had a fondness for Oscar, but that she wasn't in love with him. So both Oscar and Reeva had recently ended relationships just before they met. And when Oscar took Reeva to the sports awards, he might have been still dating his former girlfriend, Samantha Taylor. She testified that that's how she found out that her and Oscar had broken up. So apparently Oscar had a little bit of a wandering eye and, you know, a huge ego. So Reeva had previously dated a local rugby star, Francois Hugard, which may have suggested some jealousy from Oscar since Reeva and Francois maintained a friendly relationship and they still spoke pretty often. So years after this, Reeva's mother actually wrote a book called Reeva, A Mother's Story. And she said that Reeva wasn't happy in that relationship and that they argued more than a couple should have at that point. You know, they'd only been together for a short time. And Reeva's mom says she thinks that they must have had a terrible, jealous argument. You know, maybe Oscar saw some text messages he didn't like or something. Anyways, and Reeva fled to the bathroom with her phone, locked herself in the toilet, and Oscar was so enraged that he shot her through the door. And the rest of the story, calling for help and all that, was just an elaborate cover-up. So during the trial, Oscar took the stand. He actually testified for like 7 days in a row. When he was recounting the events of that evening, he said that he had yelled at the intruder, "Get the fuck out of my house!" And he was getting emotional when he was telling the story, and the prosecutor was like, "Why does that make you emotional? What, you yelled at the intruders?" And Oscar said it was just, you know, upsetting, the worst night of his life, you know, something so horrible and terrible. And the prosecutor was like, "Or is it because that's what you were yelling at Reeva, knowing it was Reeva? You wanted her to get the fuck out of your house." This guy was brutal. So the data extracted from the cell phones of both Oscar and Reeva showed that messages of affection exchanged between them were brief, but their arguments via text were long and in-depth, and the trial really dug into the text messages and phone records. Based on those phone records, that there was definitely some friction between Reeva and Oscar at times, and further, some of Reeva's messages to Oscar said things like, "You throw tantrums, and I'm scared of you sometimes, how you snap at me, how you will react to me." Another text from Reeva said, "We're living a double standard relationship. Every 5 seconds I hear about how you dated another chick, and you really have dated a lot of people, yet you get upset if I mention one funny story about a long-term boyfriend." Oscar had a short fuse and was definitely insecure with Reeva's ex-relationships. Interesting. But Oscar relented, saying that they were happy together and that Reeva had even set out his Valentine's gift with a card that was telling him, "I love you," for the first time. So, the forensics of the crime. The prosecution presented a witness that said that they heard blood-curdling screams, the screams of a woman, around the time of the shooting. So like, you know, 3 a.m.-ish. So they're claiming that that scream must have happened during the argument, because then they also heard what sounded like gunshots after. The defense says that the scream that they heard must have been Oscar when he went out to the balcony, once he had realized that he probably shot Reeva. They argued that, you know, in panic and despair, his scream must have been like pitched up. So just how dark was that room? Investigators recreated the room and they verified that it was essentially blacked out, like you could not see your hand in front of your face. And Oscar claimed that he was too scared to turn on the light. He was too scared to turn on the light, but he reached for a gun, but then he was so vulnerable, but then he didn't put his feet on, his legs. It's weird. So Reeva, when she was found, was fully dressed, like not in night clothes, like regular clothes. She also had her cell phone in the toilet with her. If she was just getting up in the night quietly to like quickly use the restroom, why would she take her cell phone? I mean, I can understand taking the phone. If it's that pitch black in the room, maybe she used it as a flashlight. Maybe she thought she was gonna be in there for a while, needed to crush some candy, you know what I'm saying? Also, the prosecution argued that the holes in Reeva's clothes didn't match with her wounds and that Oscar might have dressed her after he killed her. The forensic analysis of... The forensic analysis of the bullet wounds that Reeva suffered showed that she was first shot in the right hip, and then she fell back onto a magazine rack inside the toilet and then crossed her arms over her head. And the bullet struck her in her right side, which means that she wasn't sitting on the toilet, that she was crouching down in front of the toilet She was then struck in her right elbow and finally in the head. And that head wound was catastrophic. You know what I'm saying? Reeva also had bruising on her back, which could have been caused by a ricocheted bullet or maybe from being hit with a cricket bat. So the prosecution alleged that Reeva was hit with the cricket bat during the fight and then locked herself in the bathroom to escape from an enraged Oscar, who then opened fire on the door. So on the day of the trial where the forensic evidence was presented and they showed photographs of Reeva's body, Oscar was incredibly upset. He even vomited during the testimony. They even had Oscar in front of the court at one point without his prosthetic legs so that they could see the difference of how tall he was versus like the angle of the bullet holes in the door to prove was he wearing his legs when he fired the gun or not. And they also showed that without his legs, when he was just on his stumps, he really had kind of not limited mobility, but like compromised, right? Like his balance was definitely not good and, you know, he looked vulnerable. So after a very lengthy trial, Oscar Pistorius was found not guilty. The judge in the case ruled that Reeva's death was not intentional. It was not premeditated. It was an accident. In America, when you go on trial, you are on trial for what you are charged with. And if you are found not guilty of that, well, that's the end of that. But in South Africa, the rules are different. So although Oscar was found not guilty of murder, he was found guilty of culpable homicide, which is like the equivalent of manslaughter. He was sentenced to the maximum of that crime, 6 years imprisonment. And after serving a year in prison, he was released to finish the remainder of his sentence on house arrest. But wait, there's a twist. So the rules are they're really different in South Africa because, well, let me explain. So in the United States, if you are found guilty of a crime and you still feel like that's not true, like you are not guilty, you can appeal. You can keep appealing for them to reduce or eliminate that charge, but it doesn't go the other way. But in South Africa, oh, it's different, okay? The state can re-engage on appeals to increase the charge or to extend the sentence. What? So in 2017, the Superior Court of South Africa on appeals determined that the original sentence was inappropriate, and it was determined that Oscar should have been sentenced to 15 years imprisonment. So after being credited for time already served at that point, Oscar Pistorius' sentence was extended to the total of 15 years. So that means an additional 13 years was added to his time that he had already served. So Oscar Pistorius is currently serving that time, and his term expires in 2030, but he will be eligible for parole in 2023. So that is the story of Oscar Pistorius, the Valentine's Day murder. Did Oscar Pistorius intentionally murder Reeva Steenkamp? I guess we'll never know. Tell me below in the comments, what do you think really happened? Do you think that this was intentional, or do you think Oscar was just like super paranoid and it just got the better of him and that was that. Thank you so much for hanging out today and for watching this video. I really appreciate it. If you want to see more videos like this one, then make sure you subscribe to this channel before you leave today. I upload new videos here on YouTube every week, and you can follow me on most of the other social channels as well. If you have a recommendation for a Crue Trime story, don't forget to leave that down in the comments below. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to do that, and I've been collecting things and looking into things, and there's lots of really horrible but good stories coming soon. Don't forget to check the description box for all of the items that I used on my face today, my accessories, my shirt, everything. Nail color, it's all gonna be listed down below. That is it for now. I will catch you next week in the next video. Bye! One point, kind of nearly, spit it out. Fancy medical terms. Well, my teeth look so yellow. All right, microphone, are you gonna be a butthole today? Crue Trime.